Hey guys, it's Linda Winter. So I am finally getting around to doing the Mask Keeper template. So the Mask Keeper makes a little Mask Keeper bag, a zipper bag that's so cute, and then a towel topper. The towel topper was my friend Beth's idea, and the Mask Keeper case, the zipper case, was my friend Shirley's idea. I love it when you guys give me ideas, paper, whatever it is, and I can go to town with making a template for you. The templates now have this gray material on the back. Some of them still have the brown or tan, but it's the no-slip material. They both grab. This grabs, so when we go to cut, we get exactly what it is we want to cut. So I want to show you how to make the towel topper first because it's a get-her-done, super fast, super easy project. And so is this too. So let's look at this first because this was the original idea. So here's a little zipper bag, the little zipper bag, and this is, instead of for masks, it does have a mask in there. One for dog lovers, but this could be for doggy treats, for food, for snacks, for your lip gloss, whatever it is. So this one, you had me at woof. I did on both sides. I did a wood fabric because my dad has a little dog, Holly, that he just loves, and my dad was a woodworker. He did wood turning, so I made this one for him. I'm going to give it to him the next time I see it. But this little bag here, zipper case, can be out of whatever fabrics. You can fussy cut like I did here. I'll have another video that'll show you a new fussy cutting template that I'm going to have coming out for this. So I'll show you how to do that, but you can also just use whatever fabrics. If you're going to use a directional fabric, when you go to cut the fabric, you'll have to make sure you're lining it up correctly. You notice this with the curve here, the animals are going this way. With the curve here, on the towel toppers, you can see the direction is going this way. So they're opposite. And on this one, because I had a directional fabric, I sewed it. I'll walk you through that process. So we're going to do the towel topper first, as I said, because it's so quick and easy. But again, this little zipper bag, it has a lining. You can use an interfacing if you like. I like SF101. You can put the masks in there if you want to do that. You can add the little clip on here. You can add a little handle, whatever it is. So I'm going to put those aside for now, and we're going to take a look at, oh, by the way, these are so much fun for those boys or for the girls that love whatever themed characters. This is Harry Potter, but you can do whatever fabrics. And again, directional fabrics, you'll want to pay attention to that. Okay, so what we're going to do to make the towel topper, when we do this, and if any of you have made towel toppers before, they've been around forever. The idea of having a towel topper, I'm always into practical, and to me, the idea of doing towel toppers, well, I'm going to spend all this time to make something pretty. Well, I actually used one this last week, and they're practical. So they meet my standard, more practical than pretty. For me to do a project, I want it to be both practical and pretty. This on my oven door, on my refrigerator, on my whatever it is. Lots of people have handles underneath their sinks or in front of their sinks. This is great to keep those towels there. My kitties knock my towels off constantly from the tables and from the oven, so having this going over is just a really great way to do it. Okay, so let's take a look at what we're going to do. We need to, if we're going to do non-directional fabric, we need to have one piece of fabric for the outside and one piece of fabric for the inside. And you can see here, this one is the same on the front and on the back. So it really doesn't matter if you want to do that or if you want to do something that's a contrasting fabric. Totally up to you. I have the Meow You, and I have this fabric. I ironed on SF101 on the back side of what's going to be the front or the outside of this. It doesn't matter so much on this one as to whether it's on the outside or the inside, but I think the outside just gives a little bit of crispness. I didn't need to add anything on here at all. So what we're going to do is fold this with the template in mind. Remember, this is going to go down and the fold is going to be here. So I want to make sure when I fold this that I've got enough fabric. If I had more fabric here, I would scoot this back a little bit so that I'm not wasting my fabric. I cut myself a piece that's just a little bit larger than what I needed. So I placed that on the fold. But what's so cool about this no-slip material is that it's going to grab both my layers. So I'm going to have this as well. Now you'll notice there's direction here, but it's kind of all over the place. So I didn't spend any time with the idea of fussy cutting this at all. But I will on some of the other ones where it really does matter. So we're going to fold this. I'm I'm going to grab my template and make sure that I have enough fabric there. So I've got enough for my 2 layers, and now I'm going to stack these. What I want to do is give a good crease so that they both lay flat, and I want to get those folds lined up so that this is even with this. I've got 6 layers basically that I'm going to be cutting. So you can see I've got those lined up. I'm going to turn this to the side because I'm going to place this template on top, and I want to make sure that the template is lined up with that edge as well. Now you can use any rotary cutter. I love the Martelli rotary cutter. They make a left-handed one for me, and if you're left-handed like I am, wonderful. But if not, they make right-handed ones as well. 45, 60, 28. I'm using the 45. That works beautifully here. So I'm lining this up, making sure that's good, and I'm going to go ahead and cut. Now, I'm going to turn the template. When I turn that template, the fabric is going to stay with this. And I want to make sure that as I cut, I've got right along that edge. No more measuring, no more worrying about cutting paper or messing anything up. So I've got my layers, both the outside and the inside, ready to go. So I've got this, I've got this. I'm going to place this, and what do? We pin all the way around. I'm going to move from here, though, because I want to show you directional fabric. The directional fabric that I'm choosing to use is this. I have these little guys here, these gnomes. If you know me, I love gnomes, and I have a bunch of gnome things. And I basically looked at the fabric and said, okay, I like these guys, the one with the bird here. And when I placed this on, you'll notice what I did. I left a little bit more fabric, but that's not really how I did this. What I did was I cut out my SF-101 first. I got my piece of fabric, and when I ironed this on, it gave me where my seam allowance is going to be. So I've got this one that's directional, and I've got this one that's directional, and what I'll do is go to the sewing machine, and I'm going to sew these 2 right along this where my fusible is, because that's the actual size of this right here. Hopefully that makes sense to you. Now you can use pins or clips if you want to. I'm just going to sew because my fabric's going to pretty much stay together. All right, so at the sewing machine, I'm going to be using where my interfacing stops as my seam allowance. So I don't need to set my foot. I don't need to move my needle. All I need to do is just follow right along. And I actually am going to move my needle because I have a seam guide foot on here. So I'm going to move my needle over. And I like a seam guide foot for a lot of different projects. It's totally up to you, but it's kind of a nice thing to be able to have just as a guide, especially if you're doing assembly line sewing. So we're going to go ahead and stitch. And you would want to back tack at the beginning and at the end on this. And what I'm going to do here is just press that open. Now, you can use a finger press, you can use your iron. I'm going to use this little guy here. This is a new tool that I found, and I don't know if y'all have used these yet, but I'm not opening up my seams. I don't really need to. I'm just going to press that flat. It's one of those cool tools that just makes what you do a little bit easier, faster, easier. All right, so what have we done? I've got these 2 guys now going in the right direction. You can see here, this side, and here, this side, we're good to go. All right, so now we're going to line these up, and because I had that seam allowance built in by cutting the interfacing first with the template, I didn't have to worry about this not matching up. So what we're going to do is clip, 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 pin, 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 or just go to the sewing machine and start sewing. What I'm going to be doing on this is stitching all the way around the whole project. I want this curve here. We've got a decorative stitch here. We've got another decorative stitch here. I've got no top stitching here. We're not looking at that. We're looking at this part right here. Right inside there, right inside here, we've got a decorative stitch. Right inside here, we've got a decorative stitch. Those are from Shirley, and she did a beautiful decorative stitch. Here's another one from Shirley with a decorative stitch. Mine, let's see if I can find one of mine. No decorative stitch. I just did a straight stitch. You can see right there. So I want to show you how to make this as fast and easy, but still nice looking as possible. Do you see the distance there on the front? And then we're going to flip it over and look at the distance on the back. we're pretty darn consistent with this the whole way around. So when I stitch that, I want that to be built in. So I said we're going to stitch all the way around. When we stitch one of the sides, I'm going to increase my stitch length. And then we're going to press it, and then I'm going to rip that out, and I'm going to press again. That's going to build in that curve for me with the right seam allowance. On the other end, I'm not going to worry about it because I'm going to use that regular stitch length because we will be working there. So I don't need to leave an opening anywhere around here. So we're going to go ahead and give a clip or a pin, totally up to you, just a few to hold in place. Because I've got an interfacing on the one with the seam allowance, that fabric wants to stretch or really shrink. So I want to clip this together here. You don't need to. And I'm going to clip this together over here as well. And as I said, we're going to go ahead and increase the stitch length. So at the sewing machine, I'm going to lift up my presser foot, bring my needle up, and I'm going to increase my stitch length as long as possible. And when I get that as long as possible, then I'm going to go ahead and my needle position, I'm going to have it a little bit wider than 1/4 inch seam allowance because I'm going to be turning this under. So I don't want to back stitch on here because we're going to be ripping this stitch out. So I'm going to use the seam guide foot as my guide. Even though I'm doing a curve, it's going to help me out okay. And I'm going to go ahead and cut the thread because we're going to be ripping that stitch out later on. So you can see I've done a much longer stitch length there. It's harder to see, and it's definitely harder to see on that light fabric. And now I'm going to go back and decrease my stitch length. I like about a 2.7, 2.9, somewhere around there. I don't typically do a 2.4. That's so small. If I was working on something that really needed to be accurate and needed to be tight, then I would change it to a 2.4. Okay. When I get to this fold, right where that is, I'm going to leave that needle, lift up my presser foot, and turn this just a little bit. There's not much of an angle, but I want to have that built-in foot to help me with that. When I get to my corner here, I'm going to lift that foot up again and turn. And we're going to continue to stitch all the way around. Now we're using our regular stitch length here. It was only on that one end where we're going to be turning that inside out. Now because I have the same fabric here on the front and back of this, it didn't matter which side I worked on. In a minute, I'm going to show you a project where it did matter. So which side I left open or that I increased that stitch length would make a difference. All right, we're ready to pivot here. All right, so we're going to press this, but I want to stop for a second and show you this one right here. All right, so when we look at this, we've got directional fabric here, directional fabric here. It's the same fabric. So when Shirley did this one, she fussy cut this. Now, I love this fabric, but if you don't have a lot of this fabric, it's not going to be showing on the back. So you can find a contrasting fabric and use that. When you do this, when you leave that stitch length right here, this, the long stitch length, that's going to be this part right here. So if I were doing something where I had one fabric here that was directional and another fabric here that wasn't directional, then this side where that fabric wasn't directional, that's the side that I need to have this longer stitch length. Because again, what we're going to do now is press. So I mentioned that little seam guide, this guy here, so I'm going to use it. Now I'm going to go to the iron too, but this gets me started. I find this is just easier on my fingers. I don't have to worry about getting burned, and that gives me a good start. Now, I don't know if you saw, I stitched to the end, and you don't really need to do that. So I'm going to rip out. I'm going to cut out those stitches because I do want to flip that at the edge there. All right, let's see if I got that stitch out enough. All right, so we're going to go ahead and just do one side. And when I get that side to where I feel like it's pretty good, then I'm going to go to the iron and I'm going to press that down with a little bit of heat. And I've got an extra stitch in there. All right, so we'll press this down. And I'm only doing one side right now just to make it easy. Assembly line for these projects, boy, you can really whip these out fast. So think about what it is you're doing and think about those steps that you're doing and do the same, the same, the same, the same. So you're not going back and forth, back and forth. Now this is the side that has the fusible on there. So again, it's kind of shrunk up a little bit more than the other side. So I'm just taking my time, and you can see it's not holding down as well when I'm pressing. So we're going to, at the iron, really give this a little bit more support with that iron. The other side didn't need it because it didn't have any fusible on there. So when we're going to the iron, we're going to make sure that first side is still folded back. And I'm just going to get that right on top. Now, if you've got any kind of tool that you can use to hold that down so your fingers don't get burned by that iron, you're not worried about it, then grab it and use it. I'm just using my fingers right now, so I'm okay with that. All right, once we've done this, then we're going to go ahead and take care of our seam allowances. And what I mean by our seam allowances is we're going to pink inside those seams. All right. So I've got pinking shears in here. I love pinking shears. Pinking shears make the job really fast and easy. I'm going to go ahead and snip off. I only have a simple curve. There's not a whole lot to this, so it's not a big deal. But I do have some bulk inside of here. So I'm going to go ahead and snip. And take your time so that you're not cutting threads. Not cutting through your threads. We don't want to cut through those stitches. And when I get to this side down here, I'm going to just veer off a little bit. You can see I basically didn't go all the way over. We're going to do the same thing over here. Just trying to trim out some of that bulk. And when I get to here again, I'm just going to veer off a little bit. All right. Now, what do? We're going to go ahead and get rid of this stitching. We pressed it pretty much, and now we're just going to give it a helping hand. I've got a seam ripper that I love, and I grabbed a new one instead of my old one that's got sticky stuff because I use it with glues and sprays and all kinds of stuff, basting sprays, all of that stuff. So let's grab a new one. And I put a stapler in there, so when you've got this in here, it doesn't fall out of the package. All right, so what are we going to do? I'm just going to pick this back a little bit and cut a stitch, cut a stitch, cut a stitch. And if you have any tweezers, once we get those tweezers, we can just pull the thread. So I'm just cutting about every third or fourth stitch. And because I had a long stitch length, I don't have to worry about taking my time or putting on my glasses. It would be nice if I could see, but I can get a good enough idea of what it is that I'm doing here. Okay, so I mentioned grabbing tweezers, but do you see how all I have to do is just really pull that back? All right, so this right here, I don't even really need to pull out the rest of those because I've got enough turning. And if you wanted to, you could actually, when you stitch here, regular stitch length, lock in, long stitch length, regular stitch length here down, lock in those stitches. That way when you're pressing, this corner will be finished nicely. It's totally up to you. All right, I've got some threads. I'll worry about those threads later on, but you should be able to pull that one thread that was the back side. All right, we're going to turn this open. And this is a super fast, easy project. I mean, it's just, I don't know of any towel topper that's faster than this or easier than this. Mainly because when you're cutting, everything you cut is exactly the same. Every piece that you cut, I cut those 6 layers if we count that interfacing. Okay, so I'm going to finger this a little bit here before I go to the iron. I'm just going to rub back and forth a little bit to open up those seams some. Rub back and forth as I go. And again, I've got SF101, one of my favorite stabilizers on one side. So it is, see how it's lifting up? Can you all see how that's lifting up a little bit? It really does act kind of like a shrink kind of a material because it really just kind of gives it a little more support. But that's okay. That's what I want. I want a little bit of substance. All right. So we are pressing a little bit with my fingers. And then here's that opening area that I have. And you can see I'll be able to, at the iron, just give that a good press. And what that's going to do is most of the work for me. It's just an easier way to get a nicer finish here. Okay, so let's go to the iron. I'm going to grab my pinking shears and go in and poke those corners a little bit. And the pinking shears don't work as well here. On a lot of the other projects, pinking shears are great for that. I'm going to use my chalk pencil, even though I've got chalk in here. Hopefully I won't break that chalk. I'm just going to push that corner. I have another pair of scissors that I like. They're not super sharp. They're not really teeny, and they'll just poke out those corners well. Okay, so we're going to start on the back side and just give a little bit of a press here. And I want to flip over on that same side and make sure I don't have a lot of that gold showing. I like the gold on the back, but I don't want to see it on the front because I love my little gnomies. All right, so we're giving a good press here. That's the curve that I sewed. And now we're going to work on the side where we didn't have that curve built in. We kind of did, but now we've got to finesse it a little bit. Okay. And I'm giving a good press to that seam that I have there too. That gave us our directional fabrics. And if you were working with, where was that other one that I cut? If you were working with these other fabrics that I did, then you wouldn't have any seam that you had to worry about at all. You wouldn't have to worry about any of the middle seams there at all. So, you know, if you're working on these and you're going to be making a whole bunch of them, don't choose directional fabrics. I just happen to like directional fabrics. All right, so we're going to inside here. I'm just holding a little bit and I'm giving a press to where those stitches were holding that fabric down. And I'm going to flip it over and do the same thing on this side. This is the side with the interfacing, so it's going to fight you a little bit. SF 101, if you're not familiar with it, I'm going to keep talking about it in all my videos because, as I said, it's just one of my favorites. But it's so thin, but boy, it gives you some really good stability. So it really is worth the investment. I now have it on my website. I've got batting, fusible fleece, fusible foam, all kinds of stuff. The stuff that I really like to use because I was really confused about interfacings. I still don't know everything, but the things that I like to use, I definitely want you guys to know about. All right, so what am I doing? I'm going to pop this on the side and just kind of fold this back a little bit because I want those edges to turn out nice when I sew this towel inside. We haven't talked at all about the towel, and I have some suggestions for you on towels. And I'm just finagling this here. Get my finger out of the way so I don't get me. And I'm just going to hold that down there. And again, if you take that advice that I gave you earlier that I didn't do, stitch a little bit first with a regular stitch length. And then when you go to turn, only turn in the center area. Okay, all right, let's take a look. All right, and my kitties knock my iron off my table all the time. So I have lost a leg on my iron, and I just haven't replaced it. This is my favorite iron, and if you haven't seen it, it's on my website too, but you guys have seen them before, I'm sure. So that little iron to keep right next to you is just really nice. And I'm working on the wool mat right here in front of me. It's just really nice to have everything right here. Okay. All right, now I've got an area where my Nomi guys are a little bit more uneven on the front than they are on the back. And I want to show you that. I would take the time right here. Can you see how there's a little bit, not a whole lot. I take the time to fix that, but I'm not going to. I'm not going to worry about it. All right, so let's talk towels. Let me get this out of the way. So towels, you've got all kinds of towels. This towel is a terry towel, kind of a lightweight terry towel. And so it'll work just fine. A heavier weight towel really is more difficult to do. You'll want to find towels that, of course, really work well in the kitchen if you're going to make this practical. But if you're going for pretty, tea towels are really nice. You know, all those linen towels are wonderful, but I really like these towels too. So I've got But First Coffee. I've got But First Wine. I've got Let's Eat. That's the one we're going to use. I've got Gather. And you can see this material here is a little bit different than this. Hopefully you can see. This is more of a towel material, but more lightweight. This is a more cotton material, but heavier. It's just a heavier weight, kind of a, you know, if you're going to make a pair of shorts or something, this is a heavier weight. Whatever it is you do, we don't want bulk. We don't want a whole lot of bulk in here. I'm going to grab my little Nomi. This is one from Beth, and this is a more traditional towel. You can see that terry on the back. So you can use your kitchen towels, you can use your bathroom towels. What I want you to think about is the weight. For one, do you really need all that towel? But also when you're stitching, do you really need all that bulk to sew through? I don't want to sew through all of this. I don't want your machine having problems. So what we're going to do is cut our towel in half. Most of your towels, it's going to make sense for you to cut them in half. All right, so we're going to use Gather for this, because my little gnomes, they're gathering together, Thanksgiving, a meal, a holiday, whatever it is. But I want to show you on the Alexa Do the Dishes what we're going to do to this towel. So first thing we want to do is fold in half and see, I only have written text here. I don't have any written text there. You can see it's only on one side. If I had text on both sides, or if I had text that was really high up, then where I cut makes all the difference. So we're going to go ahead and fold. I'm going to go this way. We're going to fold in half this way. And because I don't have anything over here, I can pretty much decide how long I want it to be. And you can see here, this is basically right on that fold. So that's where I'm going to cut. And again, when I show you all the towels later on, you'll be able to see where I mean about the text being up higher or the graphic or whatever being higher. I want to look edge to edge here. A lot of towels, when you're buying them, you know, a $7.99 towel, a $14.99 towel, a $1.25 towel, they're not all going to be the same. This Stitch and Weft is a pretty good brand, but even so, I found that some of them, they're not consistent. I'm not so concerned about it because we're going to be folding it, so it's not that big of a deal. But I want to fold in half just to make my cutting easier. I'm going to line this up to one of my lines on my mat, and I'm going to come over here, and basically where that fold is where I'm going to place this here. So I've got it on my 20.5-inch mark. We've got a no-slip ruler here. This is one of my tiny pouch templates that Darla created for me, and if you haven't seen those, they're really cool. So I'm using it just as a straight ruler though, so it's just a great edge. Okay, so I've cut this. I want to show you how to fold, and then we'll look at doing Gather. But I want to talk about this other piece. Why? This other piece is great for lots of other things. What kinds of things? Linings. If you wanted to line this, if you had something that was busy, that was dark, and you wanted to be able to see inside my Harry Potter here, I love that I have the coordinating fabric for this, but it is hard to see what's inside there. So I could, if I'm making my mask keeper, I could use the other half for this. The other reason why I really want you to keep these, just stack them up and just start saving them, is if you have a Cricut, if you have a silhouette, you can add your own sayings. So if you all have not done any of that, I'm not going to be teaching you any of that stuff anytime soon because I got 1,000 other things I want you to do. But you will be seeing some projects that I'll be printing and doing transfers and those kinds of things on those towels because it's a great real estate piece and it already has the finishing done for you. All right, so this is where I want to go with this. I basically want this here to fit inside of here. Let's get this out of the way so you can see. I want this right inside of here. So you can see I pinned and pinned and I did a little bit of a fold. So I want to show you basically how we're going to do it. And every towel is a little bit different. So it's totally up to you. So what am I going to do? I'm going to give this just a good little press right here. I fold it in half. I want to have that half mark because that tells me, it should tell me, that that's halfway for this. And this one actually is centered a little bit more that way than it is this way, but good enough. All right, so with that, I can then come over and do a fold like this, front or back, totally up to you. I'm going to go the back side actually. So we're going to place this and we're going to fold to the center. And I'm going to fold to the center. Now, we're going to take a look at this and decide, I don't have a wide text here, so I don't have to worry about getting all of that in. If I had something really big, this one, when I did the fold, look how wide from here to here. That's big. So when I folded this, I had to make sure that I had all of that showing in that folded area. This one is not so much, but what I want to be able to do here is get this. I can either go straight with the fold or I can angle with the fold. Totally up to you. I can do a fold going this way. And you can see this fold going that way. And if I wanted to do that, then I'm basically going to be doing the same thing on the other side. I'm going to put a pin in it, and I'm just going to pin through the first 2 layers. And there is no rocket science method to this. You're just totally doing this on your own. Do you see how I'm basically, look how far away I am here. Way too much angle. So I'm looking to match basically this here and this here. So I can do that and I give a crease. Now I honestly don't like the creases going this way. I like the creases going in the opposite way. I'll show you that in a second. But I want you to see your options. Do you see this crease here, this crease here? That highlights this. But on this one, I'm basically going in the opposite direction. And I don't have nearly the creases. Let's see if I can get that there. I don't have nearly the creases. Can you see how this is, the fold is going inside this way instead of on the top, on the outside? But I want you again to see some options. So we're going to go ahead and look to see, do I like that angle? Is it matching up this distance, that distance? If you think it's pretty good, then we're going to lock that in with my little roller tool. And by lock that in, I just mean give it a good press here. Give it a good press here because we still have some work to do. I need to come back to this and you can see how far off I am to still getting that to fit inside. So we're going to open this up from the back and we're going to look to see, what do I need to do? I'm going to go ahead and do a fold like that. And I'm going to guesstimate. You can put a pin down the center of this and you can now match center to center. And if I'm looking at that, that's looking pretty good. So I'm going to go ahead and pin through all of those layers here. And then I'm going to do the same thing over here. So I open that piece up. If I can get my fingers to work, and we're going to fold that back here. And again, notice this is way too close for this one. So I'm going to pull that back a little bit. And I'm going to turn this way, and I'm going to just do a guesstimation. And you can see that I'm pretty good with that. You can see here, and you can see here. And let's take a look at, there we go. Yep, good. All right, so you can see that's pretty good. All right, so we have a couple options now. We can go to the sewing machine and we can stitch this down. And we can stitch this down. There's a little point there that I'm not so crazy about, so I might want to stitch that down. What color thread do I have? White, so I'm not going to stitch it down. So if I wanted to change my thread to match, then I could do that. We could also stitch this down, but I don't like doing that because most of the time when I put this inside, I'm going to be adjusting this. Now, what I do recommend that you do when we stick this inside, I want you to flip it over beforehand, and you can see I need a couple more pins because I don't want the back to be ugly. And pins are always going to work better here than clips, to me anyway. So everybody's going to do their own thing. And there are videos out there where it's measure this and measure that. I'm not doing that. We're just going to have this to where I think it's pretty good. Okay, so do you see how right inside there, that's looking pretty good. But what I need to do is show you on the back side. I'm going to hold all of this in place. I've caught the fold. I've caught the fold. Let me pull this back. Do you see here? There's a little bit of a fold and a fold that's not lined up with that. I have to make sure that when I stick that in there, that this part here is tucked inside there. Because I did the stitching here and then I ripped out those stitches, I know that my front and my back are going to pretty much match up. I see a lot of people that when they put this inside, they'll on the front put a pin right in here and make sure that it lines up with the back side. I don't really need to do that because I've already done that stitching. You know, there's 1,000 ways to get from here to there, and this is just my way of working it. So you'll find a way maybe that works better for you, and that's okay. So find what method works well for you, and if you find a better way, well then tell me, because I'm always loving learning. All right, so what am I doing? I'm pinning in all of this. And I can feel my towel in here. I can feel my towel way up here, but we're going to check on that back side to make sure that those folded areas are going to be tucked inside. And again, I'm going to show you some other folds just so you can see some other options. And notice I'm pinning in different directions. I'm a lefty. I don't know what it is, but I cannot pin the way you guys that are right-handed pin. So I'm just going to do it my way. What are we going to do? We're going to stitch along here. And again, I really would, if I were doing this to sell them, if I were doing this to give these away, I really would go ahead and put in an aqua thread in my top and then a nice kind of orangey yellow bobbin thread, but I'm not going to. So I'm just making these for fun. All right, so I'm going to turn this around so you can see right in here. I want to tuck that in a little bit more. I just pinned it and I'm still not happy with it. So I'm going to pull that out and I'm going to pull this and you can see it's not going anywhere. So I need to get rid of that pin and even this pin it looks like. And now, boy, and that pin. All right, now you can see how I can move that over and get that to the edge. It's not a huge deal, but if we're going to spend the time, we may as well make it look halfway nice. All right, now I want to go back and repin, and then we're going to flip it over on the back and make sure that we've got everything secured down because I don't want to stitch and stitch again. All right, so you can see right here, everything is tucked in nice and neat. And everything is tucked in nice and neat. And now I'm going to switch my foot on my sewing machine. Remember, I used that guide foot, and that worked great. But it's not going to work great now. So I'm going to put on my regular foot of my sewing machine. And my stitch length here, 2.9, 3.0, it's up to you. I don't really want to have a tight stitch. I don't think it looks great when you're doing top stitching and you've got a really tight stitch. Now, if you've got one of those hump things to put underneath here, then definitely use it because we are going through a lot of bulk. Instead, I started a little bit further in and I'm going to look to see where my needle is. And I'm in a good place, and I'm at 2.8. I'm going to do 3.0. And I'm going to go ahead and back stitch. I want to make sure that none of this bulk is going to come bite me right now. And I want to get that pin out of there too, because I don't need that biting me either. All right, we're giving a little bit of a push. And when I did that, my stitching came a little bit. So again, that little hump jumper, I think is what they call it. It's for blue jeans. All right, and as I stitch, I'm just moving this around. My one pin that I set, I'm pinning in different directions. I'm going to pop that out, put the needle down. Okay, good. Lift up that foot to remove that. And again, you guys that are right-handed, I think y'all have the corner market on pinning. And I'm also going to go ahead and reposition this pin so it's in a better direction for me. And by the way, you can use peel-off tape, you can use glue, you can do whatever. I've got 2 pins in here holding that pleat. We're going to get rid of those because we don't need them, and I don't need a broken needle. When I get to the edge, I'm going to go ahead and stitch off and then back stitch just a little bit. All right, let's take a look. All right, so you would cut your threads. We're going to make sure that our back is good. Remember right here when I said that I really would use that the hump jumper, I think is what it's called. You can see where I gave it a little bit of a push. It's not going to be the end of the world if you have it like that. Again, aqua thread would make all the difference. Let's look at the back and see how we did on the back side. All right, and you can see we've caught all on the back side as well. All right. So what we have done now is we've got our Alexa do the dishes. Oh, shoot. I was going to do gather. Okay. Well, that's what happens when you make samples. Let me show you gather. Because do you see what I did here? I gathered it differently. So let's take a look at that. Let's scoot out a little bit and take a look at what I have here. So we've got a fold and a fold. And you can see this is narrower and straighter. Let's take a look at this one. Do you like one style versus another style? Part of it is going to be based on this, but part of it's going to be based on that towel too. When you have something like this where there's hardly any text, you really have all kinds of options. And what I did here was I just folded. Again, I folded to the back side. Folded to the back side, folded to the back side. And this is straight here, but when we flip that over, it's almost straight there too. So I don't have to worry with this style. But you just have to decide again, do you like the idea of this look here or this look here? And I don't know if y'all saw what I just did. Boy, I really messed up. All right, so tucked inside, you see what I did there? I made this, I don't know, Halloween, Thanksgiving one. So yeah, guess what? We screw up. We screw up on camera all the time. So do you see what I've done here? But let me go ahead and show you anyway. So if this were the front, we're going to pretend that this is here. Now we decide, do we want to do a buttonhole? Do we want to do Velcro? Do we want to do a snap? Totally up to you. When you do this, if you're going to do a buttonhole, snap, or Velcro, any way you go, we're going to fold in half. And I'm going to give this a good little crease right here. And you would decide where you want that buttonhole to go. Let's pop this over. And can you see right here how far I am from the edge? Right there. Let's take a look at this and see how far this is from the edge. You determine the placement. When we get to my tab top, I'll show you that the placement of that buttonhole and the placement of the button makes a huge difference in the look. This one, not so much. So you decide where it is you want. All right, so let's go back to this guy. Let's imagine that this is here. And we have gather in here instead. Let's just pull this away so you can see. Get that out of the way. I tell you, I was looking for let's eat, and then I was looking for Alexa, do the dishes, and then I was looking for gather, and I did nothing right. So can you see this guy here, how this needs to go in a little bit more? But when we look at popping that over right about here with my button and having that tab, so that this side here is the side that we have here. So if you have an inside-outside, then make sure that you have it going correctly. All right, this is a big oops. So, all right, hopefully, though, this will make sense to you. Do as I say, not as I do. But how cute would that be? This still works for Alexa do the dishes, because I'd rather be out in the field, out in the garden, gathering whatever it is. So that still works for that, but gather is where I was going with that. Okay, so this is the towel topper. I want to show you a couple other towel toppers so you can see the difference. All right, so this was the one that I showed earlier where we used a contrasting fabric for the back side so that I wouldn't waste my good fabric here. And you can see the pleats. I've got one pleat, and it's got a little bit of an angle, all right? And you can see this towel here is smaller than this towel here. Your towels, when you fold them in half, they're going to be all different sizes. Here's another one here, and this one gathered. There are more gathers. They're pleats. By the way, you can do a gathering stitch if you want to. You can do a pleater if you want to. I'm not crazy about it. I just want to do a simple fold. I showed you the fold. I just didn't show you how to attach it inside correctly. Do you see this? This is very similar to the style that I did here. Kind of straight, with a little bit going out, so you can see that, and you just give a good press. You know, I can go to the iron, but right at my cutting table, we can't iron on our cutting mats. As much as I love cutting mats, there's no cutting mat that I know of that you can iron on top of, but you can press with this, and it gives you a good enough job for that. All right, so have fun with the buttons, be creative with all of that stuff too, you know, Velcros, all of those things. All right, let's take a look at another one. This one again, I've got one layer of towel, and it is a towel material, so it's not too bulky, it's not too difficult to stitch right inside of here. So it's not that hard to be able to do that. And you can choose a contrasting fabric if you want to, or you can use the same fabric too. This is another one that's very much like the other with that straight fold. So just real simple to be able to do. Same with, not this one. I thought I had one more that was the same. All right, you can see here, there's a teeny fold inside of here, right down the center, fold in half, and then do a small fold, and then go further out, go further out. If you want to measure it, you're welcome to do it. I'm not going to take the time to fool around with that. This is similar, but you can see this pleat in the center is a little bit wider. So I hope that gives you an idea of what to do with that. Oh, by the way, this is one that I did earlier, and you can see the top stitching here, and I haven't done the button placement. If you have not used a buttonhole foot on your machine, it is really easy. Lisa taught me how to use it the other day. I've only had it forever, and I've had machines with buttonholes, but it is easy to do. So you can do that. But again, you can do Velcro, you can do snaps. If you do your snaps, the snap tool, you know, definitely is the way to go. And then find some contrasting snaps for this. And again, you're going to fold in half. You can use your tweezers to poke the hole with the snap, or I love using this. So imagine I've marked where it is that I want to go, and I just poke a hole so I can bring that snap. Remember, the front is going to be the same. The back is going to be the same. It's this piece here and this piece here with your snaps that are going to be different. If you haven't done snaps before, we're not doing a lesson here, but I just want to give you an idea. This is going to be the same here as this one that's going to be on the back side. Those are exactly the same. And then I look at this one and I look at this one. Let me pull these here. And you can see they're similar, but different. Okay, we'll flip that over. See how those are different? So I'm going to grab all these others, put them away. And let's go ahead and do this. So we're going to fold in half. Give this a good crease. Determine where it is you want it to go. If you want it to be further up, if you want it to be further down, you can use a chalk pencil to give a good mark. And without my glasses, that's really, really dark, but I'm going to go ahead and poke inside of here. Now, do not cut your fingers. That's definitely not a good thing. So we're going to go from this side. And I just want to poke enough to where I can get this piece through. And if you have nerve damage like I do, then you're going to take your time a little bit. All right, so I'm poking that through that hole that I created, and I want to make sure that that pops through. Good, you can see that. All right, doesn't matter which one I grab. I want to make sure, though, when I put this on, that this side or this side, either one, you know, they're going to be an innie and an outie. Where is there? So I'm going to hold this here. This is going to go inside the black piece. So this piece inside of here, I'm going to hold that with my fingers so I don't lose it. It's going to sit right inside there. Hopefully I can get it in. And then I'm going to feel that that goes inside. And can you see how I'm not in there yet? All right, so I want to get that to where I can feel it inside. Okay, and I've got it. All right, so this is sitting inside there, and this is sitting inside the black cap there, and I just give it a good squeeze. If you don't have that poked piece sticking up, you're going to bend it, and it's going to go flat, and it's not going to grab the other piece. All right, so we've done the snap here. We've done the snap on the other side. Now what we want to do is line this up and determine where we want the other one to go. And this is where all that bulk of a heavy terry weight towel, you know, if you put it further down, would be too much. Now, do you want some of this to show? Do you like the idea of that showing, or do you want nothing from the inside to show? Line up your edges, line up your edges. And I'm gonna grab a pen. I'm gonna use a pen because I wanna make sure that I get this right. I'm right there. Do I have a pen that's writing? And let's double check to make sure I've got it where I want it. All right, so we're gonna grab this, my seam ripper, and I'm gonna, again, just poke a hole. And again, just take your time because we don't want to slice that fabric too much, and I don't want to slice your fingers either. All right, so I'm going to feel that it's going in. And you'll just work at it, and you'll feel. Just push down really well. All right, and we're going to take, I don't know if this is the male or the female, but the opposite one. And you can see how I put it right on top of there. We're going to grab our tool. I'm going to hold this carefully because I've got a lot of bulk. Yeah, so much for holding carefully, but you all get the idea. All right, we're going to get that inside. Make sure it stays in there, and I really want to go this way so I don't have all that towel bulk. And you could actually take a pin and pin some of this, folding over a little bit so you're not fighting with all of this. But I can feel that that's caught in there, and I can feel that that's caught in there. So we're going to squeeze really well. And now we've got that back side. And that's now ready to go. All right, so snaps or buttonholes or Velcro, totally up to you, but you decide. You could actually put something bigger on top of there if you wanted to. If you did Velcro, you could sew a nice pretty button or whatever it is, a decorative button. So that is it. All right, guys, so we have done the towel topper from the Mask Keeper template. So be sure to look for my video on the Mask Keeper template where I show you how to make the Mask Keeper zipper case to hold your masks and all your other goodies.